Tori Kruse. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Please put your comments below, and you can also find me on social media at Miss Tori Kruse. Just blessing. Since I've met her, we have a lot of the same interests when it comes to pageantry, when it comes to loving on people, when it comes to speaking. So I'm excited to share her with all of you today. And Alycia is the author of the Amazon bestseller, Beauty, Truth, and Grace, Pageant Coaching to Win on Stage and in Life. She is the host of the iTunes #1 pageant podcast, Win a Pageant. She coaches women on confidence and competitive skills to win the title. She is a former Miss California, and she's been featured in OK Magazine, Pop Sugar TV, The Steve Harvey Show. She now resides in San Diego with her husband, Randy. Welcome, Alycia. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thanks for having me, Tori. What a beautiful intro. I appreciate you. You know, I am super excited to be here because you and I have been trying to put this talk together for months now. And I'm like, I said to you last week, I think, or the week before, whatever, we were like, okay, we're definitely doing on that day. I'm like, this is going to be the best interview ever. Yes. Because it's been like percolating for weeks, months, you know? So I'm so happy it's finally happening.
Me too. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Totally.
And Alycia, just jump in right away and tell us a little bit. That was a little bit of your background, but let's be real, you have a lot else going on. So what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I started, as you mentioned, I competed myself for many years in a variety of different pageant systems. And after being Miss California, when I gave up that title, I started winapageant.com. And at that time, this was in like 2015 or so. And at that time, it was just simple courses and a little bit of coaching, but I didn't really know exactly how to serve my audience. And then it was about a year later where I discovered that interview was the biggest thing that A, caused nerves, B, made women lose confidence in who they are, and C, it was the most difficult thing to understand. What do the judges really want out of this? You know, a lot of the other forms of competition, we know what they're looking for in, you know, evening gown or swimsuit and things like that. But interview tends to be the most elusive. Mm-hmm. So I created the pageant interview game plan, which is a full-on like beginning, middle, and end of how to prepare for a pageant interview. So that's really my specialty. And we do that through what I call a legacy project, which is like the Mac Daddy of all things platform. But it uses that as, and I know you had a phenomenal platform even when you were competing too. And even though a lot of pageants don't require a platform, we all know that in order to leave an impact and in order to influence others, we have to have something that we stand for. So that's what my coaching does. I do the podcast, of course, YouTube videos, which now I actually just looked on my YouTube and I think we're over 22,000 subscribers on YouTube, wow, which is so fun to be able to provide videos for women there weekly about pageantry, about interview and platform. And and then I do hosting and speaking and things like that too, just for fun.
Wow. Yeah, you do all the things. But as far as the pageant world, you've blessed the pageant world with so much incredible content. Of course, like you said, your YouTube channel, all of those followers is incredible. If there's a pageant girl listening right now and they're like, okay, what really is the legacy project? I don't know what I'm going to stand for at my next pageant, my platform, so to speak. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so a legacy project there's nothing magical about the term legacy project. I should start by saying that. This term actually developed after I had lost so many pageants and I had been first runner-up. I was first runner-up 3 times before, which, you know, first runner-up is like, you know, it's so heart-wrenching because you're so close. You've probably put in all of the hard work. And then oftentimes as first runner-up, especially in my case, repeatedly being first runner-up, I could not figure out what I was doing wrong. Yeah. Like I thought I had all the things dialed in. I had the most amazing wardrobe. I had a phenomenal, all the things felt great, but there was still something missing. So I ended up taking a few years off and reflecting, like, what is it that had allowed all those other women that won in the years that I was first runner up? What was the difference that they did that allowed them to win above me? Mm-hmm. And I discovered that all of them, the common thread that all of them had was that they had something unique that required them. So it was something, it wasn't just like a lot of girls do platform. Like at the time, mine was the American Heart Association. And then I was like, well, I noticed that the women that were most successful had platforms that were not the title of some other organization.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I need to make mine a little bit different. So I called it something different, Get Active. And so I thought, oh, I'll just call it Get Active and it'll have this acronym. It'll be cute. But what I found was that it still wasn't enough. And especially as our world is changing and the influencer model is actually winning in society, influencers are now paid sometimes more than celebrities for endorsements because they have a larger reach. They have bigger audiences of captivated people that are looking at their stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And as pageant women, that's the mindset that we need to take over, is that, hey, I need to impact people. So what is the thing that I want to be known for? And what I discovered was that they had that thing, it required them, but then once they gave up their title, it lived beyond them. So it was something that they could automate nationwide beyond them. And so I called it a legacy project because I was like, this is like their legacy, what they're like. And actually that came out of, I was asked on stage, if you were to win, what would be the legacy you'd want to leave behind? And I like froze like, oh, and I said what everybody else says, which is, I want to be known as being very friendly and approachable and being successful and having a great year. Like it was like, blah, blah, blah. That's what everybody says, you know, it's like, that doesn't stand out at all. So I really was like, I got to hone in on this legacy project concept. Now, since then, you know, what are we, 6 years later, I've really honed in on helping other people to discover what's unique to them. And then from that, drawing out, okay, what do you want to be known for? Not just in the pageant industry, but for your life. How can we use this to leverage you long term?
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing, right? Is like using that as a stepping stone to your next success and after pageantry. Because if you're just creating something right now, I always said when I was in pageantry, it was like, you know, if I fake who I am right now, or if I fake what I'm passionate about right now in pageantry, when I win, or even after, you know, I win and go on, and if I don't win another title after that, then you have to continually, you have to just fake it all the way through.
Yes. It's exhausting. Absolutely. Yes. And, you know, and I appreciate what you're saying about fake it, because I think sometimes as pageant women, especially early on as we're entering the industry, we see people who at the top who've done a very excellent job of understanding who they are, of extracting their message, and then of marketing that message. But all we see is the marketing. We don't see all the work they had to put in of the understanding self and the extraction process, and then the marketing process and sound bites and all this stuff. All we see is the end game. And so when we compare, oh, well, what can I do? We just compare like, well, what did we think that girl did? And we just see what the outside is, you know, the marketing piece. And then we get all stirred up like, okay, I got to do all these marketing pieces, but you cannot skip the understanding self and the extraction of your message. Because if you skip that, then it just feels fake.
Oh, so true. And you can't replicate somebody else, and everybody's journey is so different. You know, like you said, you were first runner up 3 times. And so, you know, how many times I was first runner up once, but before that it was second, then semifinalists. And, you know, so it's like everybody's journey is different. I know some girls who won the first year competing. I don't know how, but it was their timing, you know? And so I think that's also, you know, something to keep in mind. If you're competing in a pageant right now, it's all in the right timing. Keep putting in the work, keep persevering. And, you know, Alycia, I kind of want to hear too, all those times that you got first runner up, you kept hearing no, you kept hearing no again. What was that like aha moment? I know you said your legacy project, but there's a sense of like, you got knocked down and you have to figure out how to get back up. And I'm talking more about mentally now that I am so even a specific project.
Yeah.
How did you get back up?
Yeah. Well, I allowed myself time to mourn. There's this incredible concept called the expectation hangover. And it's that feeling that you get when you graduate college and all of a sudden on the other side of it, you're like, wah, wah, like now what, you know, or you come back from an amazing vacation and now you're like, okay, wah, wah, back to real life, you know. And the same thing can happen when there's an expectation that is missed. So when you're competing in a pageant, you have an expectation. You're planning to win, obviously. You're scheduling your life as though I'm going to win this thing. You're packing extra wardrobe because I'm going to win this thing. You're managing your energy because I'm going to win this thing. And then when you don't, as I did many times, and like many more times than I won, of course I lost. And that's, I think, just in life, we have failures. We've got those learning moments far more than we hit the peak of the mountain, you know?
Yeah.
And so in those moments, I allowed myself time to just rest. And I had to eventually learn to plan that time to rest. You know, where I would compete in a pageant, I would say, okay, the week after the pageant, I'm not going to take on any major responsibilities. I'm not going to make any major decisions. I'm just going to chill. I'm not going to have social gathering. I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to just do what I need to do and chill, you know? And that, I think, really supported me because it allowed me to experience that morning time and just kind of move through it, you know, authentically, instead of feeling like I had to defend myself or I had to, you know, blame somebody else or something. But instead of that, I could say, yep, that was awful and I'm experiencing it now, but then there's another side. And I found that in my experience personally, it took about 2 weeks for me to mentally feel like I was able to go out and achieve something again. And in that 2 weeks, I found at the beginning when I was losing, I was beating myself up. Like I would spend that 2 weeks being like, you know, you're worthless. You're terrible, Alycia. You might as well go eat worms. And then after about 2 weeks, I was like, nah, I could kind of pull myself up and be like, no, okay, Alycia, let's go again.
Mm-hmm.
But I required that about 2 weeks to really just feel it, to not make major decisions, to just chill out for a while. And then to say, okay, now with my new mindset, feeling fresh again, letting those emotions move through me and move on, then I could get back on to whatever the next thing may be.
Yeah, that's really good because you do. I totally agree. You have to feel it. You have to be sad. You have to be discouraged for a second or for a couple of weeks or a week, whatever that time period is, and then get back on it and refocus on your goals. And so one of the things that I know I coach on, and you probably coach something very similar, is like you need to reanalyze like who's on your team, who's helping you get to this point, because a lot of times we can't, if we've never been to a certain point in life, we need somebody, a mentor, a coach, or somebody to help us. And so that's exactly what you and I both do is coach women on trying to build that confidence. So what would you say for you was that like game changer in the sense of like working with people who know where you want to go, you know, like with your legacy project, they need to work with you in order to figure out what that project is. Right.
And the how. So oftentimes what can happen is so fortunately for myself, when I was competing, I'm a strategic thinker. So I always had a strategy. I never just show up to a thing I want and be like, let me wing it. Let me see how it goes. Like I would never do that. I would be like, no. Let's get a strategy. Let me have a plan of attack here so that it doesn't feel like I'm just floating around in la la land and maybe throwing spaghetti at the wall and maybe it'll stick. So for me, strategy was really important. So at the end of any pageant experience or any goal period, at the end of the experience, I look back and say, okay, what worked and what didn't work? And sometimes the things that worked don't necessarily mean what made me win. And sometimes the things that didn't work don't necessarily mean what made me lose. But rather, how was that experience for me? So perhaps there's something that didn't work in the strategy because I didn't win. So there might have been a little tweak in the strategy, but it also could have been in my personal approach. And so that's that was one of the biggest things that shifted for me was my personal approach. For years, I was doing like maybe other women start with in pageantry is we just see the prize. We see the glory of the night of, oh, wouldn't it be great to get your name announced and get that big bouquet of flowers and get that beautiful crown in your head. And you just feel like a celebrity. And it's like, they open the red carpet and there you are walking. And it just feels so like, wow, that is what I want. But then what I found is that through coaching so many women and through being first runner up, you get pretty close to the title holder then. And so I would stay in touch with title holders. And what I found was that a lot of women at the end of their reign, if they approached their pageant with just the glory of it all and seeking that, like the joyful experience, they had a terrible year. And so they got all the glory and they got the fun and they got the flowers and they got the red carpet, but they didn't enjoy the experience. And that can make for a really heavy year. And so through that experience, I was like, you know, there's something to this about the approach shifting. And so instead of making the experience about the end being the pageant itself, I actually started to think about going through the entire year of service and beyond. It's like, Tori, maybe you've done this before. Tony Robbins does this, and Life on Fire, friends of mine do this in coaching programs, where you break a board. So, they hold up a board. They say, okay, here's the board we're going to break. You write something on it, and then you push through it. Well, I learned this, that the actual strategy to break the board has little to do with strength. A lot of people think that the harder you push through, that's going to be the thing that really, it actually has very little to do with that. And in fact, has way more to do with focusing on going through the board. So what a lot of people do is they want to go up to the board. So they stand way back away from it. Like there might be this far away from it. Well, then all you can do is push to the board. What you have to do is actually move closer so that you can go through the board. Same is true in pageant competition. So you don't want to think about, oh, I'm just preparing for this pageant. No, you're not. You're preparing for an entire year, and in fact, an entire life of purpose as a result of this pageant. So as soon as that clicked for me, like, oh, I'm actually not just doing this for the night and the flowers and no, this is actually for a bigger purpose. It's going to give me something that I'm actually going to be able to serve and step into my purpose and my power to serve people even beyond my year, and as soon as I made that shift, then it was like, now things are falling into place.
Right. Yeah. Because you're just not looking at that one crown or sash or the title. You're looking for your rest of your lifetime. Like, how can I continually make an impact? So when did you actually start your business? Was it right after the pageant or a few years later?
Yeah, it was actually right. So I had been competing for just over 10 years. And during that time, I think it was like the first time that I was first runner up. I had some people around me saying like, hey, do you ever like mentor or coach? And, and at the time I was working full time. And so I had a little bit of time on weekends and things like that. And I was like, sure, I'll like teach you what I know. Yeah. And so, or what helped me. And that is where it began. And I started charging just $35 an hour to just kind of teach people what I knew, more as I would describe that now, knowing what I know now, that was more of a mentorship relationship. Like, I'm going to teach you to do what I did that worked for me. Yeah. But as my business has grown and as my experience and training has grown as a coach, I discovered that worked actually for some people. Like, some people, when they implemented what I implemented, it actually worked for them. But for a lot of people, it didn't work for them because they're different. So that mentoring relationship wasn't necessarily going to make them successful. And so as I actually started seeing this as like, what's working, what's not working, I was analyzing, how do I actually help somebody win a pageant? I actually found that there were key things that everybody could do, that if they followed these steps, it actually would work for everybody. So then I said, okay, that's the strategy. That's the game plan that people need to follow. And so I've now been, I started the business just one-on-one coaching in probably 2006. And so that was now what is that, 15 years ago or so? And then it grew into, so when Win a Pageant officially launched online, the online brand officially launched in 2015. So it was almost 10 years or so later. Then that's when I kind of had my act together. Like, a lot of people, and Tori, you know this too, that's
entrepreneurship, right?
Girl, yes. And it also has a lot to do with like, people will invest in what they can afford. Right. And sometimes you can only afford a mentor or somebody that's just kind of like teaching you the basics or teaching you like that doesn't have the experience and knowledge. But as I completed my master's degree and as I learned, even by just teaching people, I was able to actually create a system that I knew, actually a proven system. The system really wasn't proven before that, And so I was charging appropriately. I was like, $30 an hour or whatever. I'll teach you what I know, kind of thing. And that was appropriate for that time. But as you know, once you find something that actually works, that's what actually people want. Yeah. And so that's what I did once I learned like, this is after working with hundreds of people, you start to realize the patterns of what's working and what's not working. And that's where the game plan kind of came about.
Yeah, so true. And so as far as entrepreneurship goes, how did pageantry leverage you into being successful as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, that's an awesome question. I actually believe that the entrepreneur spirit was a part of me and is what actually got me interested in pageantry, because I found that, and I see this even today, that a lot of women that are highly successful in pageantry, have that entrepreneurial spirit, which is basically a high tolerance for risk, meaning I'll take the risk. I can tolerate a risk, you know, like I'm not worried. I'm not overly concerned about risk taking. When you have a high tolerance for risk, you're probably going to be good for a pageant too, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing is a desire to create and a willingness to continue to create even when the inspiration has left. Yeah. And I think that's another really important characteristic for pageant women, that when they are willing to create something new, I'm saying, like not just like rinse and repeat what everybody else is doing, but to be fresh, to be new, to create something new. When you do that, and when you're able to continue to create even when the inspiration has left, just because you know this is what people need, and this is you know this is important for people. Those two things, I think, is what make people great in pageantry and great as an entrepreneur. So I think that actually I wanted to express that entrepreneurial spirit, but it came out first in pageantry. Yeah. And then of course it led me down the path to also be successful as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And you mentioned they're creating, and that word popped out at me right now, especially during these crazy times in our world. Pageant girls are sometimes maybe like, well, my pageant's not until the spring, so maybe I'll delay the process of training. Okay, no.
I know.
Talking to Alycia, and I would know. Like,
girl, yes.
You have to train year round. So I did hear somebody say the other day that one of the pageant questions that's going to come up a lot this year is, hey, what did you do during quarantine to prepare to win? Yeah. And so what would you suggest to those girls, that are, their pageant has been pushed out, or maybe it's even unknown still? What do you think they should create right here in this moment?
Yeah. So this is, again, I think the legacy project is like the silver bullet. It answers a lot of stuff. So having a legacy project, which is basically just a project or product. A lot of my clients will do things like write a children's book, start a YouTube channel, launch a podcast. The concept is that you are creating an opportunity to share something that you know and love and advocate for with other people. And so however that might come out, I recommend it comes out in a creative element, because it requires you to come to life. And so it's going to be then very unique and help you stand out from other contestants. So when you're able to focus on that, and you have a conviction that, yeah, like this is my purpose. When you have a strong conviction for that, it doesn't matter that you can't do it outside, or you can't go have an appearance, or you're going to be like, no, this is important for me to do. Right now, a lot of my clients are doing media appearances because they can. Because right now, the media, for the last several months, media is looking for stuff to report on. They need people that are able to communicate easily, that look great on camera, that have got something to say, and have got a cool, unique way of saying it. And so it's way easier right now than ever before to pitch yourself to news outlets, and to set up a little home studio, and find a good camera, find a great microphone, and just do the thing, And by taking that type of action, and by being like, well, the risk is maybe you'll do terrible. The risk is maybe no one will want you to be on their show. The risk is maybe I'll fumble all over my words and people will think I'm a bumbling idiot.
Right.
But when you've got a high tolerance of risk, you don't care. And that is what makes people successful, because you're like, oh, I don't care. So what? I can take this risk. It's probably going to go in my favor anyway. And it probably will go in your favor. So the things I recommend right now are see what you can do for media appearances. Absolutely. I think that's number one. Second thing is to create. So how can you reach the people that you want to reach even without a title? I think so often we as pageant women, especially early on, we think like, oh, I have to have the pageant or else how will I do anything? And it's like, that's stinking thinking, because your judge is wanting to ride your coattails, not the other way around. They don't want a contestant who's like, well, if you choose me to win, I'll be able to do all these great things. They're looking for somebody who's already running the race, so that the pageant can attach themselves to you and continue to run further, faster. That's what they're really looking for. So you can't just be like, oh, well, I'll just wait. No. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. Make your purpose be your project. So keep sticking out there, like keep doing all the things you need to do to reach your audience.
Yeah, and every single no that you get, that's fine. Blow it off. One step closer to your yes, every single time. And I bet you would agree to this. Tell me what you think. Don't you think the judges would respect you more and hold you a little bit higher if you actually did get turned down multiple times and you kept getting back up? if you got turned down on that media appearance and they said, hey, what'd you do over quarantine? Well, I tried to get 15 media appearances, but I only, actually was on, 3 different channels. So
Yes.
if you said that, I think that would go so much further than me like, I don't know. I was a little bit nervous not to even go for it. They'd be like,
Yes.
you failed and you got back up and you're still here. Let's go.
Absolutely. Yes. And Tori, I love, like, this would totally come from you, the mindset guru, because what you're describing right there is the concept of confidence, which is when you put it in your mind that it's okay if I screw this up, you have more confidence to show up for a thing. Statistically speaking, there is a higher rate of success than there is failure in most attempts. So when you make an attempt, even if your attempt is like, oh, I'm going to see if maybe I can like reach out to these 15 people. What we find is when we approach it from a confident mindset, like, I don't even care if these people shut me down. I'm just going to ask anyway. You will actually find that you will have more success than you do failure. And so you'll be like, what the heck? I thought for sure these people would decline me. And now it's like, this is crazy. They actually say, yeah. That's one of the things that I love about you, Tori. I brag about you all the time. I'm like, look at what my friend does. Because you always start at the top. You don't let yourself say, it's still version 1 and you know that, but you're not like, oh, I'm just going to, no one will say yes. So I'm just going to put myself down here and just see maybe, like, you're like, no, I'm just going to start at the top. And then if they say no, then I'll go down a notch and then I'll go to, but it's like how amazing when you start at the top, when your expectation is clear at the top and then people say yes. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like, you've got to interview some incredible people on your show. Like, I love your YouTube channel because it's got like some major A-listers on your show from so many different industries. And it's because you start up here, like, you're willing to get shut down. You're like, bring it on. Like, let's go.
No, it doesn't mean no forever. Tell me no one more time or 10 more times. Let's go.
Yep, exactly. I love that about you.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we connect so well too. We became friends because we have that same wavelength of thinking. And, if you want to be great at something, you can't be afraid of failure. Can't
absolutely
ever be afraid of failure. So, well, Alycia, do you have any lasting pieces of advice for any females or men who are listening right now?
Yeah. Well, let me just look at my notes because I was like thinking about my mind. Oh, yes. Okay. This is a good one. All right. So one of the things that you'd sent to me in advance, and I was like, oh, I want to, this could be good. So one of the things that I have found that has helped me get out of myself and start thinking about the big picture, because sometimes we get to the place where we're like, no amount of inspiration can dig me out of this rut. And we feel like, well, yeah, Alycia, that sounds great. And that sounds good, but look at what you've achieved. And so, oh yeah, well, of course, because Tori already has a title. So of course she has the confidence to ask these people to be on our show. Like, but what about little old me? And that happens. And we've all been there. And we even, I'm sure you are like, just like me, everybody thinks these things, little old me, what can I do? And what I found is that when we're having those talks, we're kind of like in the weeds. Like, if you imagine a field, a giant field, and there is a path through the field to get you out of it, but you're in the weeds and you can't see. And it's like all you can see is the details. All this grass is like around you. You just can't see anything. What you need to do is get above it all. You've got to find a way to rise above what is going on down below you in order to clearly see the path and find the way out. The best way that I have found to get out of the weeds and to get that higher view is to pray and meditate on the Word of God, because nothing is more true than the Bible. And so if all the things in the Bible are true, which I believe that they are, anything that you meditate on within there, like flip it open to any Psalm and meditate, think about it, like really think about, what is this saying right now to me? That has helped me countless times, almost on a daily basis, to just get out of myself and start saying, okay, hang on. What's the real big picture that I'm looking at here? Prayer and meditation have gotten me out of so much trouble in my life. So that would be my parting advice, is like, when all else fails, when all things are feeling like, gosh, what is the real way out? Pray on it. I truly believe that if God gives you a dream, if he's given you a vision, he will provide you access to the resources to make it happen. You have to be the one to take the action, right? You can't be like, okay, God, it's like a magical fairy dust. No.
Right.
God's training you to take action. He wants to position you for that success. but he's going to serve it up on a silver platter. One day you're going to be scrolling through Instagram and see somebody post about like, hey, would anyone be interested in this? And like, if you see that post and you're like, I would be interested in, but little old me, and I don't know if it, what? No, you better be commenting on that post. You better be getting to it, right? Because that's the kind of thing that is going to be posted for you. That's like, hello, here's a sign. Those are the resources that God's going to provide.
That's beautiful. I've literally had the chills when you were just saying that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And everything else that you shared with the listeners, you give so much valuable insight to, any of the pageant girls, especially. So if any of you wanted to coach, work with Alycia on your legacy project or anything else, be sure to find her on Instagram, on Facebook here, also on her podcast, every place. So Alycia, I know I didn't specifically mention your website. Is it freepageantcourse.com and winapageant.com?
Yep. So winapageant.com is where you can find access to all the podcasts and all of the resources that I provide. But freepageantcourse.com is where you can get started. It's a free pageant course. It goes over 101 on all these different details. It gives you downloadables. I'm an educator. My undergraduate and graduate degree is in education. And so everything that I do has like downloads to guide people through it every step of the way. So free pageant course is a great place to start, and Win a Pageant everywhere else. And on social media, it's at Alycia Darby.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Alycia. I hope I get to see you in person again sometime soon.
I know.
When events are open again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Tori, thank you so much for everything that you do. I just love your energy. I love your enthusiasm. I love your heart for pageant women, and particularly around mindset. Like, God has given you such a gift to speak life into people, but also to shift people's mindset so that they can become like instantly confident to achieve any dream that they have. And I'm just so grateful that you're doing this in the pageant industry, because it's truly up-leveling the industry as a whole. So thank you for the work that you do. And thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you for those sweet words. It means so much. And we will see each other soon. Thanks again, Alycia. Really appreciate you.
Bye.
Oh, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Also, please follow me on social media at Miss Tori Kruse. Until next time, be unstoppable.